things honoring him, things that he's achieved. I am so impressed. But you know what impresses me the most about Dr. Ray is that just with all of these things that he actually is a very humble man, a very loving man, a very giving man, and he's one heck of a lot of fun. And I'm always delighted when I just happen to come in here and there's Dr. Ray ready to teach me new things and make me aware of things that I already knew. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, Reverend Anderson, and it's all yours, sir.
God morning. No. I said God morning. I heard a good out there somewhere. Wouldn't it be interesting if, now the reason I say that is because we already know that God is all there is, right? So I said God morning just to reemphasize that God is all there is, then every morning is a God morning. But what if everything that we say is good? Like, anybody in here see Wonder Woman, the movie, Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
That was a God movie, right?
Yes.
It wasn't a good movie, it was a God movie. Or anybody in here ever go to a restaurant, you had a really good meal, but what if we switched everything we want to put good on, take it off, and put God to it? So that meal you had last week, was that a good meal or was it a God meal? That restaurant that's down the street, is it a good restaurant or is it a God restaurant? I mean, like, really, if we really thought about this whole thing about good, because if it's a good that can be changed, then it's 3 steps back. So Home Office put out the theme for today, and the theme for today, according to them, is unimpeachable goodness. That's a very funny word that they chose to use. But unimpeachable goodness. Now, the Latin root for to impeach is impedicare, to entangle or to catch. So if it's a good that can be entangled or captured, isn't really a good, because it can be impeached, it can be dismissed, it can be let go of, it can be released. But what we talk about here is that God is all there is, and if God is all there is, then that which is good cannot be changed, modified, entangled, or ensnared by anything that is external or subjective. But do we live in that way? So, I decided, any Trekkies in the room? Okay, thank you. So, I was hoping there's going to be at least one. So, in Star Trek, there's this, for anybody in here, when I say Star Trek, you have no idea what I'm talking about? Okay, everybody, at least you can. I'm just saying, because sometimes you run into folks and they're like, is Star Trek the thing with the little robot? No, that's Star, let us pray. Okay, so in Star Trek, there's this race of beings called the Vulcans, right? And one of the guiding, if not the main guiding philosophy of the Vulcan race is Kol Ut Shan. Anybody here know what that is? So Kol Ut Shan, the translation is infinite diversity in infinite combinations. So for the Vulcans, this idea that everything demonstrates and represents beauty. Everything in all of the vast ways that it shows up are beautiful. And it has to be so. How often do we take this, because that concept ties directly into this whole thing of God is all there is, and if God is all there is, and we say that God is good, then good has to be all there is. And that when we have a meal that's not so good, then we know we are reacting from our subjective side that has this, rather than this resolute side that knows that it knows. When we see a movie, yeah, I saw this movie last week, and it wasn't really a good movie. Then that's the part of me that I'm reacting from. This side that, is sort of straddling the, but I really don't like, versus, but I know. How often do we go through our lives challenging when we see something that shows up to the contrary to what we know as all there is? So we see something and we want to call it not good. But challenge ourselves, invite ourselves to take 3 steps back and say, on the surface, the effect, the demonstration of this, I want to call not good. The demonstration of and the effect of this, I want to call it evil. I want to call it bad. I want to call it whatever I want to call it. But if we're going to stand in a resolute place of knowing that God is all there is, then we have to then be invited to, challenged to, take this very thing and flip it on its head and say, God, the goodness that it is unimpeachable. It cannot change based upon anything. Because if God can change, then God can't be God. And if the good that God is on Mondays and on Wednesdays, then that's not God. Because then God is like Odin and Zeus, and depending on what side of Olympus or Asgard Odin or Zeus woke up on, determines if a lightning bolt or whatever is going to, I'm going to just wipe out everybody today. Is that what God is? That's what many of us remember God being from the old anthropomorphic. That's not good. That's moody. That's a fickle deity. And the God that we say we know that not just that it is, but it's all there is. And if it's all there is, then what does that mean about us? That it has to also be right here, right now, as us. So when we get fickle, are we taking the very power of creation and using the goodness of God and making it impeachable? Or are we inviting ourselves to get really grounded and say, good is all there is. I understand that this and this and this, that is the effect. And the effect may not be pleasant, and the effect may not be what we ideally want it to be, but does that mean that if we get really grounded in the truth, that we will be unable to see the good of a situation? Or are we able to look at everything and by our word call it to be so? By our thinking, change and transform it. Last week in D.C., my talk title was, Go and Sin No More. And it was referencing the whole, part in the Bible where the scribes and the Pharisees bring the young lady out who was caught in adultery, which I always think is funny that they don't bring the guy, but they bring the woman. And they bring her out there and they throw her down in front of Jesus and punish her, adulteress. And Jesus says, okay, hold on. So first of all, which of you have no sin? Now, we know sin being to miss the mark. Which of you have missed the mark? And all of them were like, well, yeah, we did. So they all had to drop their stones and walk away. And then Jesus turns to her and says, so where are those who accuse you? They're gone. I stand here to not accuse you either. So now stand. And what he said was, go and sin no more. Meaning go and no longer miss the mark. Now, to miss the mark. Anytime we are guilty, full of shame, full of self-incrimination, criticism of ourselves, we are missing the mark. Because we are taking, which sort of is like a blasphemy, because we are taking the very goodness of God and saying, God is good, but look at me, I'm not. Then on some level we are saying that God can't be either then. And then keep in mind that that wonderful woman, Emma Curtis Hopkins, reminds us, to know God is to be God. We are exactly like what we know. Right? To know God is to be God, and we are exactly like what we know. I am my own understanding of God. To speak of it as yourself increases it within yourself. So if we speak of a thing being full of guilt, full of shame, full of I'm ugly, full of I'm useless, full of I'm not good enough, full of any of that, we are missing the mark. We are saying that this great, powerful, infinite, all love, all joy, magnificence itself, beauty itself, is showing up around me, moving through me, here with me, and showing up as me. However, I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not thick enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not something enough. I'm not rich enough. You know, it's funny that Joel S. Goldsmith says that anything that is ever asked of us can be accomplished, can be provided, when we realize that it's not you who has to provide it, but the Christ of what you are. The Christ that is showing up as you. The infinite I am that you are. It provides. Why did Jesus say, oh, I don't do this stuff of my own? It is the I am that does it through me. So, when someone says, I want to start this new business, $10,000. And the first place we go is, oh man, I wish I had $10,000. Oh, if I had $10,000, I could. We go to that place of self. Ray doesn't have $10,000. Ray has to work to get $10,000. Ray has to do this and that. But if Ray gets grounded and says, of myself I need not do. Let me ground myself and know that there is only one power and one presence, and this is good. And the moment that happens, the feeding of the 5,000 happened. The healing of the blind happened. All of this stuff happens because I've let me, Ray, step out of the way, ego personality, step out of the way, and I've let the infinite goodness of creation say, yeah, now it's time. Now let's create. Now let's demonstrate. Now let's manifest. Now let's change the world. But am I willing to do that? You know, it's interesting that this month's Signs of Mind magazine, there's a gentleman, anybody in here read the magazine? So the gentleman that's on the cover, Mitch, his article in there is very challenging. And I love it because in there he says, we in New Thought should be storming the gates of heaven. If our presence as metaphysicians and mystics and New Thought people is not demonstrating what it's supposed to be demonstrating, which is beauty and love, compassion, peace, joy, prosperity, wealth, not just in stuff, but in the love that we feel. Are we prosperous in our love, or are we stingy with it? Are we prosperous in the amount of peace that we walk when we walk through the world? When people see us, do they see, she's a very peaceful person. Now, I don't know her, I've never met her, but every time she walks in here and I'm bagging groceries and I see her, I just feel so calm just because of who she is. Are we prosperous in this, or are we stingy? And when I say stingy, I mean the only time we are full of peace and full of compassion and full of this is when we come here to this room around one another who are like-minded. If this is the only place that we are doing this, then we're stingy. If we only love those who are like us, then we're being stingy. We are not allowing the good that God is to be unimpeachable. We are allowing that good to be ensnared and entangled and captured into this consciousness of, but it's Monday. But I don't like her. It's either all or nothing. We are either all in, do or do not. There is no try. We're either in it or we're not. There is no middle ground. And And see, the thing is, anybody ever stand on railroad tracks? Not while a train is coming, though. But stand on railroad tracks and you look down, and this wonderful thing called perspective makes the track look like it converges. And you're like, oh, a little while, they touch. And then you keep on walking, and it's like, wait a minute, but beside the tree they were touching. And you can walk until you get back to where you started, and then it will never converge. But what we do is we see life that way. We see the illusion of it appears that the sky and the earth meet at that horizon. It appears that this converges and they touch. It appears that this person is mean or evil or wrong. It appears that these people are poor in body, mind, and spirit. It appears that this is. But are we willing to challenge and be invited to be so prosperous and full of the good? Full of the good that God is as us. That we are able to walk into a room, walk past a homeless person who's sleeping or eating, and simply by walking past them, the vibration of good awakens the vibration that they are, because they're God too. And sometimes we are called to be the alarm clock, even when we're not intentionally meaning to, but just our presence sends out the waves of, wake up. Do you know how beautiful you are? Wake up. Do you know how magnificent you are? And just by walking past them, something starts to percolate in them. Something says, you know what? I'm tired of living on the street. I'm tired of digging in garbage cans for food. I used to be better than, I'm going to be better than this again. And you didn't do anything. You didn't give $1. You may not have even said hello. But you walked in the knowing of who and what you are. You walked in the knowing that every person I pass, that which is divine in me sees and acknowledges that which is divine in you, because there is only one beloved. And it loves itself enough to see itself, to see the reflection of itself in every eye and every face and every interaction. And it's what I say when I say, let everyone that I see and everyone who sees me see the face of God. Let everyone that I hear and everyone who hears me hear the voice of God. And let everyone that I touch and everyone who touches me feel the love of God. And when we stand in that place, then yes, the good that is God is unimpeachable. Yes, the infinite diversity in infinite combinations of becomes our way of life. What if, anybody in here ever had a Rubik's Cube or played with a Rubik's Cube or set one on fire because you couldn't solve it or something? Threw it in the, I hate you. The devil with you. Because I've had this thing for 5 years and I still can't. Do what Tracy did. I'm going to pop the corner off. Take it apart. What if the Rubik's Cube was a game to find out how far from the original uniformity we could take it? Meaning, the more messed up it is, the better. How many variations can I create? Not trying to get it back to all white, all red, all blue, all... I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to get one red right there. Okay, now I'm trying to move that red to there, because that's 2, and then 3, and then I'm going to put a red and a yellow here, and then I'm going to put a red, white, and blue there, and I'm going to move it from the top to the bottom, to the middle, then to the bottom, and then put it... What if that's what the game was about? To be as creative as we possibly could be, rather than fumble and fight to try to get it back to the status quo of, it's all supposed to be green, it's all supposed to be blue, it's all supposed to be red, like that's how it's supposed to be. That's how life is, it's supposed to be normal. What if that's not normal? What if that's not how it's ultimately supposed to be? But we've allowed ourselves to believe that it's supposed to converge, that it's supposed to meet, that it's supposed to be. Rather than challenging ourselves, using the spiritual principles that we have. Because I said this to a couple of folks, that what if CVS started selling, you know how they have, now only $29.99, buy one now and get the second one for the, what if they came out with, there's now a pill that will solve every physical woe that we have. Everything from a headache to a hangnail to diarrhea to everything. This pill has, and legitimately, it is now the cure-all. Do you think that you would be able to walk into CVS easily, pick one off the shelf, and go about your business? Or do you think there would be so many people at CVS that there would be a line like we've never seen for a Bruce Springsteen concert? I would venture to say that there would be a nice, very long line of people waiting to get this pill. Now, check this out. But what if they then upgrade it, you know, a year later they upgrade it and say, well, wait a minute. This pill, not only will it now all of your physical woes, but your emotional, psychological, financial, relational, like this will fix everything now. So, you're getting a divorce? Do you want to get a divorce? You don't? Take the pill. You're getting a divorce? You want to get a divorce, but you still want to love each other? Take the pill. Oh, you're losing your job, but you still take the pill. Like, what if the pill was the magic pill? Would everybody probably want this thing? I would venture to say yes. I don't have to be broken poor. You're homeless. Take the pill. I have my own company now. I'm the CEO, the CFO, and because I took the pill. Like, that's what would happen. But see, check this out. We have this magic pill called religious science that technically does just that. It changes and transforms everything from the appearance to what we want to demonstrate and manifest. So, relationships, religious science, new thought. Job, new thought, religious science, science of mind. It's a science. If you do this, this, and this, you get the result. 2 + 2 = 4. It's a mathematical principle. But are we changing our thinking process? Meaning, the average person, if we were to say the average human was thinking in terms of mathematics. So in kindergarten, we're not really doing much math. Because how old are you? This many. No, you're not, hon. You're only one. That many. Like, so kindergarten, you may not be getting it. By the time you get to 4th grade, whatever, you know, you're doing basic math, you know, addition, subtraction, you got that. The vast majority of humanity stays right there. We stay at an elementary level of thinking and cognition and contemplation. Here in New Thought, we are challenged to take our thinking to a level of calculus and trigonometry, where we're not just doing numbers plus numbers. We are asked to take letters and put letters into the calculus, the thing, and is it? Anybody see Hidden Figures? So Hidden Figures, these human computers, that's what they were called. These African American women were called human computers. Were asked to change and transform the manner in which they were using mathematics at NASA in order to put a man into outer space and stuff. And what they found was the math already exists. But by taking the old math and taking the current math and combining, now we have everything that we want, everything we could ever want, everything that we need, everything that we ever ask for, we already have. The getting is in the asking. Because we cannot ask for something that we know we will not get or that we believe that we cannot get. Why would we ask? Why would I go to Dunkin' Donuts down the street and say, yeah, can I get a margarita and a side order of chicken? Like, why would I go to Dunkin' Donuts and ask for that when I know I'm not going to get it? So we ask for things that on some level there is something in us that says, ask. Because in the question is the answer. Ask. Because this infinite goodness that is creation says that what you are seeking is seeking you. What you are asking, you are the answer. Or the question wouldn't even show up in you. So are we willing to take the invite and take a step back and say, no more missing the mark? Today I am going to invite myself to be grounded enough to know that God is good. It is all there is. And therefore I have to be good as well. And the moment we allow ourselves to acknowledge that, have I made mistakes? Yes. But am I good to my core? Yes. Do I have a reason to feel guilt and shame? No. No. If you do, 2 + 2 = 7. Do you? Oh, I'm such a horrible. Now, many of us have done that, which is why we are in the conditions we are in now. Because we took a relatively simple error and we made it mean what our lives are. Rather than simply saying 2 + 2 = 7. Incorrect. 2 + 2 = 4. And then move on. Because that's what we're supposed to do. Acknowledge the error, change the error, and move on. Not perseverate over it, and not go down the deep, dark rabbit hole of, I'm not worthy. We're not worthy. I can't think of the name of the show, whatever, Saturday Night Live, anyhow, Wayne and Garth, but anyhow, I digress. Are we willing to be so good that we are unimpeachable? That nothing can entangle or ensnare us to convince us that we are not worthy? Are we willing to be so good that even in the Japanese martial art of kyudo, archery, their concept is, I'm going to be so grounded in that hitting the target, the physical target, doesn't matter. Because when I am aligned in attitude, in motion, and technique, hitting that target doesn't matter, because in my consciousness, I've already hit it. And when I've hit it in my consciousness, it increases the likelihood that I will hit the physical target. But the physical target doesn't really matter. Are we willing to release that? And no longer let the physical demonstrations and conditions of life convince us that life is not good, that this world is going to hell in a handbasket, that the powers that be are evil and need to be, versus saying 2 + 2 = 1,629, according to them. Let's erase the error and put the correct answer in its place, rather than allowing ourselves to be ensnared and entangled by, recognizing and knowing that there is only good. Let's treat. Simply allowing ourselves to be breathed. Acknowledging right here, right now, in this moment, the level of gratitude that wells up within me because I know. I'm grateful because I know that God is all there is. I'm grateful to know that good is all there is. I'm grateful to know that this goodness itself is the truth of who and what I am. And if it is true for me, it is true for every single man, woman, and child. Every rock, every tree, every fish, every bear, everything that is seen and unseen, it is good. I'm grateful to know that this goodness moves in and through all of creation. It moves before me before I leave the house. It stays in the house when I have left the house. It supports my feet as I walk across the ground. It cools my neck as the sun bears down upon me. This goodness is in everything, every moment, every experience. And I'm grateful to know that when I allow myself to sink into and see and acknowledge and recognize this goodness, that it becomes increasingly ever present. That before, when I may have not been able to see it, my awareness brings it forth and makes it so. I am grateful to know that this power is available to each and every one of us. I'm grateful to know that God being all there is, anything that shows up to the contrary, anything that is impeachable, is not truly God, but merely an illusion, an error in thinking. And I'm grateful to know that I have the right and perfect eraser to change the error. For I have a mind that is the one mind, that is the mind of God, that is all-powerful, all-knowing, and ever-present. And this one power, this one presence, love itself, is the truth of who and what I am. I'm grateful to know that this truth is true for everyone as well. Knowing this, I release this word, knowing that it is not the word of Raymont, but the word of love, speaking of itself, about itself, back unto itself. And because this word came from God, moved through God, back unto the law of God, it is already done. So it is released, and I expect to see it demonstrated. It is released, and I command that it be demonstrated. It is released, and it is so. And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.